Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Inside Your Screen podcast Bite Size, where we're discussing all things Snowpiercer, episode 2, Prepare to Brace. In this episode, Brendan, we get a bit more detective work going on by Layton. We see the kind of main sort of plot line going along with the death of the guy. What's his name? Scott? I can't remember his name. The main kind of person that we're trying to find out. Sean Weiss is the guy who's died. And we have a little few things going on. What did you think of the second episode, Brendan?
I liked it. I enjoyed it. There was a lot going on. It really kind of it's quite a fast paced episode. This one, I enjoyed it. You found out like quite a lot. Like you said, it went quite in depth. This episode was pretty much 90% detective investigation, Layton kind of investigating the murder, and we learn quite a lot. Well, we learn a lot, but we're kind of still not being pointed in the right direction. There seems to be a little bit of cannibalism going on somewhere. He's kind of. It seems that his ex-wife is it alluded that
I think they're just exes. I don't know if they're married or not, but
Zara is her
Zara,
name.
yeah.
So his ex is pretty much. It seems like his ex was one of the suspects, and she is no longer a suspect. He finds out that the people are being kind of. Are they being like so? I'm not sure. Are they being murdered for their meat for cannibalism, or is that
Well,
just
it kind of transpires that Sean Weiss may or may not have been a snitch. I think it's heavily implied in this episode that Sean Weiss was given a lot of what do you call them, like perks as such, perks that normal people wouldn't get, and it comes at the end when Layton and Jennifer Connelly's character they're talking. He's been beaten up,
Melanie?
Melanie, sorry, and he basically turns around and he kind of knows. He's basically saying like, well, maybe he knew something that Wilford didn't want, or people of Wilford's inner sanctum didn't want finding out. So it's kind of heavily implied that perhaps Sean Weiss was a snitch, and that's why he was really killed. But there was also a kind of element that his dismemberment was part of, like, that he does the detective work to find out. And that's one thing I want to touch on in a second, sort of thing. But like the butchery, like, the butchers who could cut the kind of meat in a certain way. It was the butchers. We get to the butchers. There's some kind of external force of nature that causes that kind of carriage to come apart. But we'll get into that in a second. Yeah, first of all, I want to kind of say, like, we start the episode off with the kind of repercussions of the rebellion, if you will. So Ruth, who is like a very kind of, she's a hostess, but she seems to take kind of, a lot of pleasure in victimizing the tailies of the last kind of carriage. We see her basically about the kind of punishment is essentially putting your arm out of the window of a train with this kind of like perfectly slotted hole in the train for a couple of minutes, where your arm essentially becomes frozen. If you've seen Terminator 2 at the very end, where the T-1000 goes into, gets the liquid nitrogen and then sort of shatters into like tiny glasses, you can see where this is going.
I
And
really
she's
like
about,
that. I really
yeah,
like that, by
it's
the
a
way,
good thing.
because
Once again, if you've
we
seen the film, like, this is a kind of thing, but I like how they've introduced it to the series as well. Yeah.
yeah, I just because we knew kind of at the end of the last episode it was kind of they said like we have to take someone's arm, and I wasn't expecting that way for them to take the arm,
And
and
it's
so
a brilliant way. It's
I
also
thought
kind
that
of,
was very very
it's a
yeah.
great way. Like, once again, I was talking in the first episode about like the Gothic tradition, in terms of like, how you have like the haunted house where you can't escape from somewhere. In this instance, it's like this medieval sort of torture where we know the outside is like really bad, like, it's minus 100 and something degrees, and it's kind of like a visual aid to just to kind of showcase to the audience once again that you can't go outside for more than a couple of seconds without becoming frozen. And that kind of comes in later on as well, but we'll get to
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
But I thought that was very imaginative. That was very good.
yeah, but it's also the kind of fact that Ruth is actually going to put a child's arm through the hole to begin with. It's only until her mother steps up and says, like, take me, very kind of what's the Hunger Games, take
Yeah.
me in her stead type of thing. And yeah, the mother's arm gets basically put out there. Yeah, we get a bit more about the suspended animation. So because this is like the kind of the central, I guess, plot is this murder mystery, and we know now that the girl who Nikki Janae, who was accused before of murdering, doing the same type of role, she's been kind of thawed out of
The frozen state, or
frozen
whatever
state,
it
the
is.
stasis that she's in.
We need to give it a name because it's good because they haven't.
Yeah,
Should we just call it the Demolition Man kind of?
let's call it the
freezing?
Demolition Man sleepy time.
Yeah. So yeah.
So Nikki Janae is the young woman who was accused and convicted of the train's first murder, but obviously now, because the same MO is happening, whether it be a copycat or it's a new person, she's been thawed out of the Demolition Man sleepy time. But there was something that I didn't. This might become a plot line later on, but her arm looked like something out of Requiem from a Dream. Like
Yeah.
she seemed to have like this big sort of hole in her arm. I don't know what that was about.
No.
Any thoughts on that, or?
No, again, I was a little bit confused by that. I was confused by a few things, if I'm honest, with during this episode.
What were you confused about?
Well, that was confusing, and I did find just a lot of the Layton detective work, in regards to the cannibalism and so.
Yeah.
He kind of, they found these limbs, okay, in the freezer of the butchers, but he kind of instantly said, it wasn't the butchers who did this, right?
Yeah.
But then he alluded to the selling of the meat to the, out on the markets and in the fast food places.
Okay, I think that was more of a kind of case of, because he comes from like the tail end section, and they've obviously had to resort to cannibalism, and he basically says that and it's I actually quite like the scene where they're in the morgue, and there's two things that I want to sort of say. Bess, the kind of, she's not quite a hostess, she's like a kind of security force person. I like their team up.
Yeah,
I like the kind of the chemistry that they have.
Is that Till, the one with like is that her name, Till?
I thought it was Bess. I could be wrong though.
Yeah, it's Bess Till.
Yeah, Bess Till. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
I like the kind of like team up as where she's like becoming like the straight man to, he's like the kind of renegade, the loose cannon, if you will, like the buddy cop sort of style thing. And she's like the straight laced one compared to his kind of like, hey, I know I'm doing my own thing. But like that scene in the morgue where he basically turns around and Layton says, oh, are we not going to say the thing that's really, the elephant in the room here? And they both look at him, the morgue attendee, whatever you want to call her, and the mortician, for example, and Bess, and they both look at him and he's like, they ate him, like, they used his parts for meat. And then he kind of goes into the whole thing of like when they were eating ramen earlier on, and the bits of meat in there. Yeah, that may have been a bit of a push. Like, why would he just sort of automatically think cannibalism when she was eating, lunch and stuff like that? But it kind of makes sense to me in the respect of, well, for the story anyway, that like, because he says like, it almost seems like the kind of person who killed Sam Weiss took pleasure in it. And obviously, like, a butcher is just doing it for food sort of thing. That's what leads them to the bovine, track or carriage or whatever you want to call it sort of thing. So I think I like that kind of like character aspect where
I know, but I'm still confused. So are the butchers selling the meat, the human meat?
Oh, right, I see. So the limbs that are found inside.
Or is Layton on the wind up? Like there isn't human...
No, I think it's alluded to that maybe it's a kind of like a side hustle.
Because
I'm not entirely sure. Or
because he does say it to Melanie or whatever or Mr. Wilford. yeah, Melanie slash Mr. Wolford. He does say, there's cannibalism going on here. So was the whole butcher's thing just a wind up in regards to there wasn't actually human meat in the ramen, or was there? And so that's where I'm confused.
I think it's either one of two things. I think it's either the one case is that the kind of meat supplies on the train aren't as good as they've been made out to be, and they've had to resort to cannibalism in certain instincts, or that there's some kind of like side hustle going on, and there are sort of elite class people that just want human meat. I don't know yet. I think that's something.
Okay, so it's an unanswered question then.
Yeah,
so I should be confused.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's something that hopefully will be answered in the next few episodes. But from my kind of point of standing, I think it's more along the lines. Initially, I thought, okay, so obviously there aren't enough cows, or there isn't enough meat to go around, because there's one thing that you kind of quite rightly pointed out. Melanie's character is all about balance, and I think there's obviously things going under her nose that she doesn't know about, and this balance is being kind of like doing a bit of a seesaw ride. And I think maybe food is probably one of those things. So I'm not sure at the moment whether it's the kind of case of, people are getting killed and there's limbs coming out just to kind of circumvent the food shortage. Yeah. Or if it's the kind of case of there is like an underground, cult type thing where people just like eating human flesh. Who knows? I'm hoping it gets answered, and it's just not a kind of plot point that gets kind of missed in future episodes.
Yeah. So it was just the way you kind of mentioned the investigation. I thought, are these answered questions? But they're not. That's good. I'm on the wavelength.
Yeah. Well, hopefully. I mean, we could be both completely wrong, and it could be something else completely different.
If they drop the story now of the whole meat in the butchers, and they found then I'm going to be wound up. But anyway,
I hope it's not like just a kind of loose plot point that just gets the character from A to B and they actually follow it up.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
But we also find ourselves in a new car, or a new carriage, the night car, the Babylon Berlin S Club, where the lonely and it's kind of like a 50s jazz style.
And what's it called? Is it called the night car or the night carriage?
The night car, I believe it's called. Where we're introduced to Miss Audrey, who's the singer, and she's the one who found Nikki with the first body, so she could be a character that kind of comes up again in future episodes, because it's always that kind of I don't know if you ever watched Taggart or any of those kind of like murder mystery programs, but there's always that one thing where they say the first person who saw the body is usually always the killer, or is highly a suspect. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, Layton then gets with Zara, and they're meant to be having this kind of meditation sort of room. There's a kind of area where so Miss Audrey basically takes Layton into this kind of room to say you have to understand where Nikki's gone and what she was up to. And they come into this kind of room that has these kind of four walls of just this kind of I don't know what you would call it. Water, but it's kind of like a VR. It's like a VR sort of screen. Yeah. It's not like an aquarium. It just seems to be a kind of where people go to kind of chill out and stuff. And of course, Layton and his ex get it on. Boom.
But not before he kind of has this meditation where he feels like he's back in the real world.
He starts off, but then it basically just becomes them.
So basically, what it was is
smacking face.
On this train, they have the most new wave brothel ever, where there isn't actually, because it's by all accounts there isn't sex involved. It is just they just go there for meditation and to kind of, and however this meditation, or whether it's, I don't know whether they're using science or how they do it, or if it is just pure meditation. But it was alluded to that he escaped his body and was back, in the real world, or or outside the train in Earth before all this happened. So yeah, real new wave brothel, man. It's called meditation, dude.
That's how you become harmonious with you get Zen Buddhist monk style with that. But we also learned something more about the train a little bit. So we kind of find out that if they the kind of momentum of the train is the thing creating heat. So there's this kind of like quandary that Melanie finds herself in. Obviously, they know that there's an avalanche sort of like coming along the tracks. And one of the engineers asks her, like, you can either sort of cut down the power to kind of conserve heat, or we can sort of slow down. And she just kind of like goes, well, we carry on course. It's
that great type, like it's perfect just with it being Snowpiercer and, piercing through the snow, the concept of, but it was very much a nod to the whole Titanic. It was like the iceberg ahead, keep on at full steam, lads, keep on at full steam.
Go straight on into danger, it's fine. But I find it quite interesting that the momentum of the train is something that creates the heat. And I think this is something that's maybe going to be something in the future, because the train can't stop, obviously. Because I was thinking that in the first episode, I was thinking like they could go like at 5 miles an hour, surely. They could just like, poot all along and that wouldn't cause a problem. But
I don't know what it was, but I got that from, I don't know. It was something I maybe just had in my head that
intrinsically
is the train can't stop. It can't stop. It has to keep going because it's powering itself. I
like the fact that they've explained it though in that kind of respect.
Yeah,
like it's not just a throwaway line. It's actually something that you can probably see in later episodes becoming a problem.
Oh, definitely. This episode was a really good example. Like I started off with saying there was a lot going on, and like you said, it was almost like the train in itself had its own story, just with the weather going on, and like you said, they get hit by the huge avalanche, and it wipes out one of the bovine where they're kind of they're farming cows. And exactly that. I think we're going to have loads of this, and then we have the scene with it's with Melanie, with I'm looking now, Jinju, and with the
engineers,
and but also almost like her assistant. The one who at the first episode, I think she might be her and she is that.
Oh, Ruth, the one that was sending the people's arms outside, sort of thing.
No, not Ruth.
Who's the assistant?
The Asian lady.
Ah, yeah. Well, I don't. Yeah, she wasn't in this episode, was she?
Oh, she was also the scientist. She was the one who was kind of defrosting.
Yeah, I think. All right, maybe this will be.
So but herself. Melanie, and I don't know the name of the engineer guy,
the doctor guy, the Demolition Man, sleepy doctor guy.
Yeah, no, the guy who was initially riding the train at the.
Yeah.
She has that kind of conversation with the three of them in regards to we've now lost the cows, and it's almost suggested that that's our cows gone now. We've got no more cows, so we need the balance of the train is broken.
Yeah, so you can see. I think the cracks are starting to show for her because this is the whole thing.
Damn train, Tony.
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's kind of. I think this will be something. Obviously, now they're so with the entire herd of cows dead, now they're lacking beef and methane. That's something as well that they say to kind of create other things. So the balance is at risk.
So already in episode 2, they're having to save power by putting the at different times, taking out the tails energy. They alluded to little things like, there'll be no hot water in the jacuzzis in first class today. All those little things. So I'm intrigued to see, though, if that was just purely based on not having cows, or is the fact, are they going to fix the carriage? But yeah, I think if there's going to be so many kind of obstacles along the way, including your murder investigation.
Well, did you notice something, Brendan? I don't know if you saw this or not. When Layton and Bess first turn up to the bovine carriage, they knock on the window, and he looks like a junior butcher who says to them, like, "Oh, you can't come in here without warrant." He's the only one to survive. Did you see that?
He's alive.
Yeah, there was a part where the train, when all the windows smash and Layton and Bess are running towards it, he sort of staggers away from the carriage. So there was a guy in there that was working as part of, I don't know what capacity he works in. I don't know if he's given a name or not, but I did recognize him because I saw him. I thought He looks a bit dodgy. I don't know why. I don't know what. There was
Someone
nothing.
survived.
Someone survived. He staggered out. Watch it. Watch that little bit back when the windows are just about to crack or they've cracked or anything like that, and the kind of the klaxons are wailing, everything la 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 is going on. He staggers away, so he's alive. So there's someone from the
As
butchery
in,
shop.
you say staggers away, but as in he'd have to get out of the door.
Yeah. He was like he just made it out, sort of thing. He looked like he was shell shocked, but he kind of walked away.
And was he the guy who they first spoke to?
He was the guy they first spoke to. Yeah, when they came across, and he got the other guy in. They tap on the window, and it's like a young guy, and he gets his like superior, and the superior comes over, and that's when Layton says about the knife. Goes, oh, that's a nice knife. That the young guy, he's the one staggering away. So there is someone else that I think. That's why I think there will be a link more into this, but we shall see.
Yeah, I totally missed that.
Yeah. You've got to be eagle-eyed, man. You've got to be eagle-eyed in this. So also as well, then, we see a little bit more of maybe Melanie's backstory. There's a point where she goes to the locker and there's a baby and she kind of like strokes it caringly. Do you think like she's a mother herself, or, you know, what do you think the baby element is there?
No, yeah, there's actually, that was something I did pick up on. There's a photograph of, isn't there a photograph of her holding a baby? So,
doesn't necessarily mean it's her baby, and you know there's this whole baby lottery thing going on.
Yeah,
so
and
maybe
I also think, I'm convinced there's a whole freezing thing going on. She was very, very, when she found out that the defrosting of I don't know the character's name who they are defrosting.
Oh, is it Nikki? Did I say it earlier?
Yeah.
Nikki, yeah.
So the defrosting of Nikki isn't going too well, and she seemed really kind of emotionally affected by that.
So you think the baby's being frozen?
I think she's got a few people on ice, because my last prediction was that Mr. Wilfred, whoever he is on ice. But now I'm thinking maybe she's put her child on ice, and now it's the fear of what's going to happen when I defrost it.
Yeah, interesting.
You shouldn't freeze people, really. And
well, if you've got the technology, why not? Man, I want to be frozen. If I'm getting to a point where I find out I have some disease or something, it's like, no, freeze my brain. And when the technology is found, then you defrost me, you put my brain in a new body, and I come back in like 2135, and I'm like having a whale of a time. Yeah. But then the way the world's going at the moment, it'll probably be destruction, and it'll be like a whole bowl of flame anyway. So, you know, we'll see.
Somebody better start making a train.
And indeed. And lastly, we have Layton, who's still loyal to the tail end, where he's making carriage notes on a little piece of cloth and leaving it for the sanitation worker, who's also part of the tail end. So he's obviously still, you know, his heart lies with the tail end of the section, but he's just working the angles, man. He's working the angles. And I can assume that it will come to blows with him and Melanie at some point. You can already see the cracks with both him and her. I'm still going with my point that they'll form an alliance. There'll be something, a grandiose thing that happens that they'll need to kind of come together. But we'll see what that is. So what are your predictions for episode 3, Brendan?
Oh, we haven't spoken about the fact that they've what was the name of the character? The character Josie was quite predominant with the young lads in this. They've recruited up the kids, haven't they, as apprentices?
Yes. Sorry, you're right. Yeah.
So as part of, like, obviously, but it's so after the whole the bovine carriage gets taken out by the avalanche. As we mentioned, we have that kind of scene with the conversation between Melanie and her two sidekicks. I forget their names.
It's called the engineers. Yeah.
The engineers, about how, you know, we're going to have to, you know, cut certain things, be more efficient. But there is a line in there about, you know, we need to train up some of the apprentices, and you kind of get the feeling that maybe obviously there's this perception that, you know, the further you move up the carriage, obviously the easier life is. But I've got a funny feeling that what's in for those 3 kids is going to be worse than it sounds, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I get you. I mean, the kids are the future. We all know this, but yeah, I think with
But purely
Snowpiercer,
based on them being recruited on, oh shit,
mm,
uh, it's all gone to crap. The train's not going to run as efficiently as it should be running, so we need to do something now. Let's get some. I've got a funny feeling that we're going to see the kids having to do some bad stuff.
okay, all right. I'm not going to spoil anything here, but there is something from the film. I'm not sure if they're going to do the same thing.
Yeah, don't say anything.
I'm not
Don't
going to say
even
anything, but
stop. Stop even mentioning the
I'm
film.
not.
Tony.
I'm going to say. I'm
I
not
don't
going to say.
know.
I'm not going to say it. But people who've seen the film will know what I'm talking about.
Okay, well, yeah, I've got a funny feeling that like it's going to be more slavery than apprenticeship for the
Okay.
kids.
Well, we shall see.
Yeah.
Hmm. But yeah, we'll see where Layton's detective work goes on from here. We'll see if that young recruit from the bovine carriage turns up in episode 3. And yeah, I guess,
I have a quick question for you
yeah,
before we kind of
shoot.
summary and
Yeah.
have a quick prediction on episode 3. There's an awful lot of kind of TV shows out there, right? And I understand this is a kind of sci-fi Netflix made TV show.
Hmm.
But I've seen an awful lot of different types of shows with different types of special effects, and they all kind of have different types of feel to them. Okay.
Hmm.
And do you get a kind of, and it's not just the special effects, I don't know what it is about this. Do you get a kind of cheap feel about the production of this?
I wouldn't say cheap. I would say there's obviously confines of they have to kind of look in the way of making stuff work within a kind of train carriage, if you will,
Yeah,
which for in a kind of way an independent film would work marvels of this. Like you look at Cube. Do you remember the film Cube?
I don't know.
It was basically about a room, a cube-shaped room, where prisoners woke up, and these rooms were full of traps and stuff like that. But in terms of the storyline, what they would do is there'd be like sort of panels in the room that they would go into the next room. But then all you have to do is like just recreate the room with a different like lighting. So in that respect,
But they haven't done that with this.
no, you
So
can.
in the first couple of episodes, don't get me wrong, there's just something about it that just kind of comes across as low budget. And it's not, because my God, if you look at the cast of the thing,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
like
I think it's.
it's
I think they're
not
trying
low
to
budget, but
ascertain
I
that
don't
kind of independent sort of movie spirit type of thing. And no, I can understand what you're saying. I don't know if it's because of the fact that everything feels so confined, and I think that's a directorial sort of decision to make.
possibly,
Because at the end
possibly.
of the day, you're in this kind of like, we've all been in train carriages and we all know, this is meant to be like a souped up train, blah, blah, blah. I get that. But also at the same time, I think it's a deliberate sort of decision that was made to kind of make everything feel a bit confined. And in doing so, that might give the impression of, things are so very like, let's be honest, like, yeah, you go from one carriage to the next. Okay, they're like different. Like in one scene, you have like an aquarium, and the next scene, you have like a bovine sort of cattle factory sort of thing. In another one, you may have a school, and the next one, you may have this, and that's all going to be prepped and planned, but within the same dimensions because you want to kind of keep everything as is, if you know what I mean.
It doesn't come across that way, but I
It
would
can't. I'll tell you
assume,
what, it comes across to me.
it's how they've done it.
Did you ever watch like Star Trek or anything like that?
Yeah.
It has that kind of vibe of like you're in this ship, you're on this kind of like, all the kind of corridors and all the kind of like things look similar. There are certain rooms that look different and whatnot, but it's all because it's all set within this kind of like place.
No,
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 not that. Okay.
no. I kind of think I just think Star Trek's a bad comparison, but
I'm only saying
like
it in
I
the
don't
kind of
know.
respect it's like
As an
set on a
example,
ship or
as an
it's set on
example,
something.
the scene where they're having the noodles, right?
Hmm.
That kind of came across quite authentic. That scene came across quite high budget. I believed it. it was also, do you think that was a little bit of a nod to the start of Blade Runner?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was meant to be set like that was the whole point of that carriage. Is that like some kind of hedonistic style sort of street alley type affair, and I think that's what that carriage was meant to be.
Whereas what was it called? The night car.
Yeah, the club sort of thing in it. Yeah,
came across as kind of like a low budget kind of American drama.
Okay. Interesting.
No,
we'll see. Yeah, I mean,
they're on.
I think you're being a bit picky. I think you're being
on
a
a
bit
train.
picky.
Yeah,
they're on a train.
I think
I
am being.
I think maybe what you were saying there is like something aesthetically that was meant to be. They were meant to convey the sense of a nightclub, but they also had the confines of being in a sort of train carriage, and maybe that's where the kind of whole sort of juxtaposition of like this kind of like really sort of, I don't want to say the word cheap, but like the kind of like low down area, but then compared to the kind of cluttered version of like a street alley that where she's eating the ramen and all that kind of stuff. I think that's where the kind of comparisons are made. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I'm just being a little bit picky, a little bit hard.
Well, I think we're going to wrap it up there, Brendan. But we will be getting into episode 3 very shortly. And for all the people that have been listening to our babble about Snowpiercer episode 2, then please join us if you haven't already done so. We're on Twitter and inside your screen. We've got Instagram, we're on SoundCloud, and we're on iTunes. So join us and join in the debate as well. We want to hear your thoughts. Where do you think the next few episodes are going? Where do you think this plot line of this murder mystery will go? Will Layton be able to kind of tally the kind of whole tell and the front end version? Will he be able to play both sides against each other? Will Melly be able to keep her cool? We don't know. And we're hoping to find out. So yeah, join us on the next episode of Inside Your Screen Bite-Sized Podcast with Snowpiercer. Inside Your